Good morning. In today's report, we're taking a closer look at a major historical question. What really drove the United States to enter World War II? For decades, textbooks have pointed to a single trigger, the attack on Pearl Harbor. But as our investigation shows, the story is far more complex. While the bombing on December 7, 1941, pushed the nation into a formal declaration of war, the United States had already been moving, slowly but steadily, toward global involvement. By the end of this segment, you'll be able to identify the economic, political, and social forces behind America's decision and understand that public opinion at the time was far from unified.
All right, so as we move on, before we begin, we'd like to consider this question, which is, should the US have entered World War II before Pearl Harbor? So let's take 20 seconds to pause and record your initial thinking. Yes, no, we're unsure, and no right or wrong answers are here. So now let's examine the evidence.
In the years leading up to Pearl Harbor, the world was already destabilizing. Across Europe and Asia, aggressive expansion by Germany, Italy, and Japan was reshaping international politics. Germany rearmed and violated the Treaty of Versailles. Italy invaded and conquered Ethiopia between 1935 and 1936. Japan invaded Manchuria in 1931 and launched a brutal assault on China in 1937, including atrocities like the rape of Nanking. These aggressive acts challenged the global order and set the stage for World War II. These developments alarmed many observers, yet at home, Americans remained divided. Isolationism, fueled by trauma from World War II or World War I, was a powerful force. As the National World War II Museum notes, isolationists viewed the conflict as a foreign affair that did not require American involvement. On the other side, interventionists argued that democracy itself was at stake. If Great Britain or other allied powers fell, they warned, the United States could be left vulnerable. While the public debated, the federal government began quietly shifting its posture.
Yeah, so in this one, we could see that economics played a central role in the U.S. trajectory towards war. Through this New Deal, it spurred some recovery, so like the Great Depression integrated throughout the 1930s. It wasn't really until that military production really went up in 1940, I believe, and that unemployment really began to drop dramatically. At the same time, American leaders understood that the economy really depended on stable global markets, so this axis dominated, was like in Europe, Asia, and would really threaten the U.S. to their access to trade specifically. And in 1941 was known as the Lend-Lease Act, authorized the U.S. to send billions of dollars in military aids like to Britain, China, and then later the Soviet Union. And the officials described this move as supporting democracy, but it also marked a decisive break from neutrality, which was basically the U.S. Navy ships then clashed with the German submarines in the Atlantic. Once the U.S. also then imposed strict economic sanctions on Japan. So after really its escalation with the aggression in Asia specifically, and these measures only heightened the tensions and placed the two nations on a course for collision. And let's take a moment now to consider how might providing economic support to the Allies pull a nation closer to war. And pause the video if you'd like more time.
President Franklin D. Roosevelt publicly maintained that he sought to keep America out of direct conflict, but his speeches, especially his fireside chats, increasingly emphasized the need to defend democracy around the world. Privately, administration officials believed the United States could not remain secure in a world dominated by fascist powers. Roosevelt's policies, including naval patrols and closer coordination with Britain, reflected a gradual but deliberate shift toward involvement. Beyond the immediate threats, U.S. leaders understood the long-term implications. Participation in the war offered the opportunity to shape the post-war global order and solidify America's emerging role as a world power.
Yeah, so in this period, Americans were far from being united. In particular, the First American Committee was one of the largest anti-war groups in U.S. history, and they argued that entering this war would be a mistake, basically. They made then again the Lend-Lease Act and warned that supporting Britain would actually drag the country into like foreign conflict is what they've imposed. These efforts campaigning against the Lend-Lease Act though ultimately failed, as we saw. Other Americans, however, did believe that ignoring this aggression would eventually endanger the nation. Growing reports, especially of the German bombings in Britain, as well as with the news of Japan's ongoing campaign in China, especially the shift in public sentiment towards the war was a big one. And these arguments show that people's interests were drastically different, complex, and strategic. So debate persisted until one event did change everything.
We now return to the event that dominated headlines across the country, the attack on Pearl Harbor. On the morning of December 7th, Japanese aircraft launched a surprise strike on the U.S. Pacific Fleet. More than 2,400 American military personnel and civilians were killed, with another 1,200 injured, and the nation was left stunned. The assault ended years of political debate overnight. The next day, Congress declared war. Public opinion swiftly unified as Americans rallied behind the war effort through military service, industrial production, and national mobilization. But as our reporting shows, Pearl Harbor was not the beginning of involvement. It was the moment that solidified a path already underway. Think of it as a catalyst that turned years of tension, aid, and debate into a full-scale war. And this attack did not just affect the United States, but the entire world, reshaping global power dynamics.
All right, so let's take a moment, let's connect this all. So pause the video and complete this following. The first one is economic motive, so an example, the Land Lease Act. Political motive, example, defending democracy, and then social motive, the example for that, public debate over neutrality, right? So once you fill in these three subsections, return for one final question.
Now that we've reviewed the evidence, we ask again, was Pearl Harbor the cause of U.S. entry into World War II, or the catalyst for a decision already in motion? Take a moment to reflect. This distinction matters because history is rarely the result of a single event. It's the production of multiple forces converging over time.
All right, so I'd like to say thank you guys for joining us. Today's report revealed how economic pressures, political strategies, and social debates all shaped the path to America's entry into World War II. And understanding these factors helped us interpret that not only the past, but the choices that these nations continue to face today. And stay informed. Thank you for watching.